Hey, what is going on, everybody? Happy good evening and happy Tuesday now to all of you who are joining us tonight on this live episode of Last Stop Waterfowl Outdoors podcast. I'm happy to have all of you with us. If you're streaming us right here on our YouTube channel or our Facebook page, guys, we would just like to tell you welcome to the podcast. So tonight it's good to be back with y'all. We've had about 2 weeks off. We've been kind of busy over the last couple of weeks. We had some scheduling changes that we did with a few episodes, and now we're back with y'all tonight live, guys, and we couldn't be more happy. So welcome to the show, and I'm excited about this episode because I'm going to be honest with y'all. This episode is one that I've been looking to probably for a couple of seasons now, and I have never had the opportunity to get around and record this episode that we're going to do tonight. And the reason it's special to me is because we're going to be inviting some of the guys that I grew up with in my hometown of Ville Platte, Louisiana, in Evangeline Parish, right down the road in Evangeline Parish. And we're going to have a couple of friends that all went to school together on with us tonight. And we're going to be talking some of the Cajun traditions in Evangeline Parish that relate to the outdoors. Everything from waterfowl, squirrel hunting, and even culinary, the cooking and the food, and that makes this area unique and that I grew up in, and what fueled my fire for my love for the outdoors, guys. So we're going to share their stories, get you introduced to the guys that I have on with us tonight, and I think you're going to enjoy this episode. I think you're really going to enjoy the guys that we're going to have on with us tonight. So without further ado, guys, we're going to go ahead. We're going to hop on and bring them in with us, and I'm going to add them in one by one, so bear with me here. So we're going to bring the guys in, and we're going to add them to the show with us tonight, guys. So there you go. There we go. We got everybody on board with us. So, guys, if y'all don't mind, introduce yourselves to the audience tonight. We'd appreciate it.
Hey, you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Hey, my name's Brad Lonely from Ville Platte, Evangeline Parish, and I've been hunting all my life. Next man up.
David Vidrine, Ville Platte, Louisiana. I'm the eldest statesman out of the bunch. Still a young whippersnapper at heart only.
That's right.
Only. Although I got to get my doctor to check my heart. He'll tell me so. Next man up who'll be checking the heart.
Yeah, we'll check. You need checking. I'm Brandon. I grew up here in Ville Platte. Grew up on a rice, crawfish farm, soybean farm, and I'm happy to be here today. Join y'all in this podcast.
That's awesome, guys. Well, thank y'all so much for joining me tonight on this episode, man. Like I told them in the credits, this has been a long time coming. I'm going to be honest with you. This is something that I've been wanting to do, a little project on this particular episode I've been wanting to do for a couple of seasons now. And we just needed the right crew, and you guys are the right crew apparently to get together. And, we all grew up together. We all knew each other growing up. We actually all went to the exact same high school in Ville Platte, Louisiana, Sacred Heart High School. We're all graduates of that particular high school, our alma mater. So, a big part of us growing up together, guys, was we all grew up not only in the same community, but our community, we grew up in the outdoor community as well. And that's what this show is about. So if you could, what is it about Evangeline Parish and the particular area that you guys live in, that we grew up in and I grew up in, what is it that kind of sets itself apart from other areas of the state as far as growing up in the outdoors and being an outdoorsman?
I would say it's mainly the small town vibes over here. Everybody's like family around here. Like you said, everybody grew up hunting and fishing and in outdoors. And, I mean, I'm 43 years old. I got friends that are 40 years old all the way up to 60 years old. And that's the kind of vibe you get around here in Evangeline Parish, especially around Ville Platte.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Brad. It's everybody kind of still hangs out with each other. It doesn't matter, especially on an economic scale. You can be at the top, and your best friend might be at the very bottom of the economic scale. We used to say we can hang out with a president and the garbage man. and people are hunting together and do it. It's always been that way in Ville Platte. Another thing is we're an agricultural town. So it sets up. Even though we have the Cotton Festival, we have very little cotton around here anymore. It's always been beans and rice. Last, 25 years or so, cane is starting to be more prevalent around the Tate Cove area, the Whiteville area. That's becoming a lot of cane, but still it's predominantly rice and beans and things like that. And I don't know, we grew up very family oriented too. So, the big thing in Evangeline Parish was always squirrel season, opening weekend of squirrel. Well, everybody went with their parents. Their daddies were taking them, since the age of 4 probably. And that just became the automatic. And I think it just carried on and on and on since then. And it's still that way today.
Yep. Brandon, what's your thoughts on that? What input do you have on that?
Growing up here, small town community, a lot of ag, as David said. You didn't have a lot of distractions of the bigger cities. And of course, when we grew up, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have social media. We didn't have any of those things. So what we looked forward to on weekends, my favorite thing was going to the camp with my dad, my parents, or my dad and one of my dad's good friends who happened to have kids that were my age. And it was always a way of life to hunt, fish. So in the wintertime, we hunted. In the springtime and the summer, we fished. We spent many, many weekends at Miller's Lake growing up. We had a camp there. One of my dad's best friend, Bobby Foray, both of them have since passed away over the last few years. We went there just about every weekend throughout. Anytime we had a chance, we were there. And we didn't have a lot of the distractions. We didn't have a movie theater, except when I was very young. We didn't have a mall. We didn't have those things. So what we did, I worked on the farm, made a little extra money when I could, crawfished, helped my dad cut rice, soybeans. But on the weekends, what we did was the outdoors. There was always something surrounding the outdoors, whether it's fishing, hunting, planting a garden, doing those things. And that's really what brings this community together. As growing up, I'd like to continue to see that, but there's a lot more distractions nowadays than when I was younger.
Yeah,
and
that's a great point you make right there, Dino. I mean, guys, how much has it changed? Like you mentioned, Brandon, we didn't have cell phones. None of us, out of us 4, we didn't grow up in that generation. Brad, you and I were probably the closer ones, I guess. It kind of came, right around when we were graduating high school. I know I had my first one like in college, but how different is the kids growing up now? Like, what's the challenge that y'all see, technology versus being able to get them interested in the outdoors? What's the challenges there that you guys see?
Oh, there's no doubt it's technology, social media, cell phones. That to me, that ruins a lot of these kids. And like you said, we all went to the same high school. I remember being in high school, and we couldn't wait for midterms in December because they let us out of school at noon on those days. And we would have our shotguns, hip boots, decoys, everything in the truck ready to go. As soon as the bell rang at noon, we were on our way to the rice field. And we'd hunt all afternoon till dark. That was the best school days of the year.
Now you can't. We're laughing about it because, in the back of your truck, everybody had some gun rack, and you had your shotguns in the back. You'd have a gun in the rack. You can't even go to school with that anymore.
I was going to say, Mark, you cannot step on a campus with a firearm now to arrest you.
No, can't even do it with a pocket knife on it.
No, that's true. That's true.
No, and I remember. I talked to one of my good friends recently about this. When I was young, I'd wake up, let's say on a Saturday morning, my parents would be like, "Go play outside. Look, here's your pellet gun. Here's your bring your dog, Angel." I had a little pet angel dog. And Go shoot some blackbirds, go shoot some robins, whatever. If you see a squirrel, kill that, a TT bird, come back with it. We'll cook it whenever you get back. And we were gone for hours, and there was no communication. The neighbors wouldn't really tell you anything. Because I didn't stay just on our property. I would go on our property, the neighbor's property, the next neighbor's property. Sometimes stay gone for 5 or 6 hours, come back with a few blackbirds, a squirrel, a robin or two, whatever we could find. And nowadays, you ask, what's the challenges nowadays? Is you probably I wouldn't feel safe sending my kids out on just randomly on someone else's property and say, I'll see you in 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah,
because it's the challenges out there, the dangers, I guess we're more adept to because we see them all over the news. We see them on social media. And that's another thing is the challenges with social media. A lot of these kids don't take that to heart as much as we did because they have so many distractions with iPads and Snapchat and TikTok and Facebook and all these social media platforms that they like to get on and communicate with their friends. We didn't have that communication with our friends. If you didn't call them on a rotary phone and tell them, hey, can you come over and visit? Then you didn't really communicate with them. So there's a lot of challenges. There's a lot more external factors out there. Whereas back then, when I was young, growing up, that's what we did. And every one of us enjoyed doing that. So you'd call one of your friends and say, come on, we're going to go. My dad's feeding the blackbirds in the yard. He threw a big pile of rice. But, 200 or 300 of them pile up. You'd shoot them with a shotgun, pick up, 100 of them, de-breast them, make a jambalaya, a blackbird jambalaya, give them to friends. It was fun. It was good times,
It was. It was.
Yeah,
I used to do that a lot.
What you were saying earlier. I'm sorry. Dino, what you were saying earlier about there's a bunch of don't feel safe. Well,
yes,
we all grew up riding bikes.
That's it.
We were riding bikes
all over town.
There's no more bike ride. I was in town, so I grew up right by the old A&P, which is now Champagne's.
Yeah,
I would get on my bike, ride down Lincoln Road, all the way into Swallow Subdivision, and meet Chris Fuselier and Troy Andrepont and them, and we would play football in the pasture or baseball in the pasture, and then we'd go hunt throughout town with our little Benjamins, come back with a little pocket full of cereals and blackbird, whatever. I mean, we were kids.
Yeah.
We were little kids riding bikes. There's no more bike riding.
Yeah.
Because for the most part, people are crazy.
Yeah.
My parents still live.
It's no longer
my parents
safe.
still live in the same house that I grew up in. And when I was younger, you couldn't find a squirrel in that neighborhood. It was me and a good friend of all ours, Gene Latour, lived next to each other. And we would wake up before daylight and hunt the neighborhood like it was public property.
Not you and Gene.
Now you go in that neighborhood
and no one told you anything. No one told you anything. It's a good. I grew up right behind Teats, so I'd ride my bike to Teats every single day. Teats Food Store, it was the old store, of course, and I was always gonna get whatever candy I could afford or gum.
Some
Big
League. You were gonna get some Mallow Cup.
Yeah, the Big League.
Yeah, get those points.
Mallow Cup points. That's right. That's right.
Now we don't, and look, it was, and then we had a Big Red, a 3-wheeler, and so I'd ride that around the yard. But you didn't want to waste gas going to Teats, so you'd ride your bike to go to Teats. Because my dad would fuss if I burned too much fuel in the 3-wheeler.
Hey, how much of an innovation was that Big Red 3-wheeler when it came out? Y'all remember when those came out?
Absolutely.
got a great story about a
Fantastic.
big red.
Go. I want to hear.
Go ahead,
Mark,
Mark.
go ahead.
Well, many moons ago, when Province Healthcare ended up purchasing the Ville Platte Medical Center. Now, this is, I guess, good gosh, Dino, how long ago was that? When Rutledge and them.
Before I was back here. So
Right. Well,
that was,
Smiley Fontenot had become very close with Rutledge. At that point, Smiley was working in the lab, and John Rutledge, who was once owner of Province Healthcare, he and a fellow by the name of Marty Rash, they were COO, CFO, CEO. Nice guys, good dudes. Well, they come in and they're giving the hospital and all of the employees a talk, and they kind of giving them a background of who they are. And Rutledge is talking about how they like to chase the ducks. Mm-hmm. Now, these guys are from Tennessee. Province was born in Brentwood, like a lot of these big corporate hospitals are. Well, Tennessee guys, and they talking about how they go from here to here to here to here, and they chase the ducks, and they love waterfowl hunting, right? Well, towards the end of his spiel, Smiley says, "Y'all don't know how to duck hunt." So Rutledge, not knowing what's going on, he goes and he meets Smiley after the talk, and Smiley says, "Y'all want to go on a duck hunt? Y'all just come meet us, and we'll take y'all duck hunting." He says, "Well, okay, how about next weekend? I'm going to bring a group of guys." Mm-hmm. So Smiley starts calling the troops, and he says, "Hey, Mock, we're gonna rent out the conservation lodge at the park, and we're gonna bring some of these big wigs. We're gonna bring these big wigs hunting." So it's me and Possum and Kippy and Bagron, all the crew. Well, Kippy was hunting at Kazan's Lake, and Kippy had, that big hill that you got to go down. I guess they were hunting near JS's old place. Well, they had a big old hill that you'd go down, and when it get muddy, you hardly couldn't get back up that thing. And they would go down to the fields. Well, Kippy had a big red, right? Yeah. So Marty Rash is going to hunt with Kippy at Kazan's the next morning, right? And he's got a big red. And they're trying to get up that hill, and here you go. He's sitting there with Marty Rash, man's worth millions. He's the CEO of Province. And it's Kippy Manuel. And then we all know Kippy, so we can kind of grin about it. And Kippy's about as bruh as they get, Hey, how you doing? He's got that hardcore coon ass in him, right? So he's trying to take Rash, and they're trying to get back up the hill. And he gets about a quarter of the way, 3/4. He's getting there. He's spinning. All of a sudden, it starts backing off. He downshifts it by mistake. Boop. There goes Rash, a complete flip. Listen, on his back, there's the big red doing coot boots all the way down the hill. And Rash is muddy from head to toe, and I mean soaked, just nothing but mud. So we watching this from on top of the hill, and we do, oh no, this ain't good. So we started hollering, Rash, we're gonna come down and get you. We're gonna come down and get you. He says, it's okay. I'll walk. I think I'll just walk.
He was no more.
Here he comes. He is nothing but a big ball of mud, having to walk on the wood side part of that hill, trying to get up. And there's Kippy fighting all the way back down to the hill, having to turn his big red over and try and get that thing up the hill. The big red one of the most dangerous machines that ever put out there.
That was a death trap.
Look, they worked now.
They work. They work. They work. You still see them out there, Mock. You still see guys with them big reds still running to this day.
I saw one. I saw one not too. I saw one last year. I was hunting with Smiley and them at their place they call Pianton, which is North Louisiana.
Yeah.
And I saw a big red 3-wheeler, and I said, "My God, I wasn't sure if anybody had those things anymore, but they still around."
Hey, listen to this. This is a story in regards to that. So I'm in power sports. That's what I do for a living. I'm in the boat business. We do ATVs, all that stuff. Okay. So a couple of years ago, I had a sales rep. He told me, he says, "Look, man," he says, "you remember the Big Red?" I said, "Yeah, I remember the Big Red. Of course, everybody remembers the Big Red." He said, "I had a dealer in Florida that bought a warehouse that used to be a power sports warehouse." He said for a massive chain dealership. He said when they got to the warehouse, he said they found 15 Big Reds that were still crated in the warehouse and had never been completely assembled, and they were in the crate. He said they sold them for $7,000 a piece in the crate, unassembled. People wanted them; they were buying them like that.
Oh yes.
He said pristine, like never been even put together.
That's wild.
That's crazy, man. That's
They
crazy.
laugh, but you could always maneuver them.
Yeah.
So they were solid in rice fields because they were light. They would semi-float. And these days, if you get a 420, a 500, you high center that thing, you can't hardly move it.
No, they're too heavy.
Listen, I still have an old Honda 300, a little of a 4-wheeler. I keep it simply for the fact for my rice hunting, and I can go levee over levee because you can still just pick it up and jump it.
That's it.
You can't do that with those big bikes of today.
You can't. Hey, I'm running a 1987 Honda 250 4-tracks that we run, and that we got from an old man that used it, and it looked new when I bought it. And that's the thing. It's 2-wheel drive. We get in mud, and we can pick it up and move it if we got to.
That's right.
That's right. They
red, white, and blue one.
Yeah. You remember that, Brian?
Yeah, we had one.
Yeah, red, white, and blue, and then they made a red one too, like the Honda color red, But yeah, great bikes, man. I mean, 87 and that thing's still running. You can't break them, dude.
That's right.
We got a comment.
Yeah, that's two bikes.
Just joining after watching the content with the family on the roof. I'm not sure. I got you. But hey, I want to go back to something that we briefly mentioned a while ago. We're talking about Evangeline Parish tonight, guys, and we showcasing Evangeline Parish. And we're in October right now, which we all know growing up is squirrel season in Evangeline Parish. That's before waterfowl kicks off. Bow hunting, I don't know how big bow hunting is now. It seems like when I was a kid, bow hunting wasn't as big back then as it is probably nowadays, maybe. So when October hit, we were all in the woods and we were squirrel hunting. So something unique to Evangeline Parish that everybody, when I tell them I grew up in Ville Platte and I'm from there, man, they say, Ville Platte, y'all the ones that got off of school on Fridays when squirrel season opened. So y'all talk a little bit about that. How important was squirrel season, in October to our area growing up? And is it still that way today? Because I haven't been home living in that area in years, but you guys all are in that area still. Is it still like it used to be? And kind of talk about the tradition and the history of how that came to be where we were off on Fridays.
Brad? It's still pretty same. Sacred Heart still off on Squirrel Day. It's called Squirrel Day, Friday before opening weekend. I actually think we're the only one in the parish that's still off.
Are y'all?
Or is it the whole parish?
I'm not sure. I know it's
the public schools are not
deal whenever you're playing an opponent that doesn't want to play on the Thursday.
Gotcha.
Also the high school football games are on Thursday because Friday nobody's going to show up to the game. Everybody's at the camp. I think the main reason they did that, I don't remember. I couldn't tell you what year that was done. Maybe Mark or Dino. But there were so many kids that wouldn't go to school on Friday. They just had to close it down.
Yeah.
So they started shutting down school on Friday. Then a lot of your older generation would bring their kids. They would leave at noon on Thursday, head to the woods.
That's right.
Because Friday was an educational day, but it wasn't at school.
That's
Yeah, that's right.
that's correct.
It was in nature, in the woods.
Bradley, that's been going on, dude, for since I was a kid. Big L was the principal. So I can remember, even probably I was 6 or so going with, and it was Daddy, and this was before he even became principal at Sacred Heart. But we were going with Coach Bobby and the whole bunch. And back then, it was an entire crew, and we were all going to Oakdale. And people were camping underneath the bridge at Oakdale. You had the Corrells, the Davids, the Loneys were probably in there. Brad, I don't know if you were around even at that point. Robert may have been thinking about it. But I don't
you may have been practicing, Mark. You may have been practicing.
Yeah. But listen, they had it was loaded with Ville Plates right there in Oakdale. Then we ended up changing, and we would do it in Elizabeth. What do they call that? 10-Mile Creek,
Okay.
2-Mile Creek, 10-Mile Creek. It's on the other side.
That's all part of West Bay, I believe.
It is now part of West Bay, but they had those little tables, those concrete tables and benches, and we had a big old crew there. That was Coach Bobby and the LeBlancs, Jay and Clarkie.
Yeah.
Listen, there was a crew. Even Jim Boyne would go and he would play reveille on his little trumpet. Oh, absolutely.
Man, I haven't heard that name in years, Jim Boyd.
Yeah, the maestro.
He's still around.
That's what everybody would call him, maestro. And he would play that doggone horn. But those were some of the greatest times growing up, was Squirrel Weekend with your dad and with the crew. And it's like Brad said, it was educational weekend for the youngins for sure, just not at school.
Yeah. You learned a lot of lessons.
It was a good time. It was a very good time. But how long?
You probably learned more in the woods on that Friday than you learned at school. That's a fact.
That's a fact.
That's a fact. You're right.
Now, it's been as long as that we've always had that day off since, I started probably at Sacred Heart. I'm now 58 years old. So it's been a long time that the Friday has been shut down. Hey, they had a big old article in the New York Times about it, I think.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Somebody had done something. There had one in Seattle, and then I think the New York Times had picked it up. Squirrel Day in Evangeline Parish, or Squirrel Weekend in Evangeline Parish.
Yep.
It made the big news.
Yep. Hey, like me not living, in Ville Platte for some years now, I get asked that all the time. When we talk about hunt, I've been asked on the podcast about it. If wherever I go, do you guys find that people ask y'all they're interested in that when you're talking about? Y'all ever get asked that?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I've got some guys down in Houma.
Yeah.
Some of my boys down in Houma, we kind of laugh and grin about it, between Lorette and Glenn and those guys. And then those Tennessee boys, they couldn't understand any of that. We're good friends with a group out of Tennessee and Arkansas, where we had gotten to be really good friends with Marion McCollum.
Okay.
Marion was the owner of Max Prairie Wings, who passed away last year. And
Yeah.
but their conversation was always, now certainly it started with ducks, but they were always knew of Evangeline Parish and the squirrel hunting weekend. And
Yep.
because they had kind of heard it and read about it and just laughed about it. So they would always bring it up. Hey, y'all off of school for squirrel hunting, right?
Yeah.
And they'd grin about it and laugh. So a lot of folks know about it. A lot of folks talk about it. and it's still happening today. So
that's awesome.
and
man.
hopefully
It's
it's
something that's so unique to our culture growing up, and I'm proud of that, man. Because, like I said, Mark, I've talked to people on this podcast over the last 8 seasons that are across the country. And when I tell them I grew up in Ville Platte in Louisiana, even if they don't know Ville Platte, the name, because they're so far away, they'll say, Louisiana, man, y'all get off of for squirrel season of school. Y'all have to go to school. And I'm like, that's my hometown I grew up in. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's so cool, man. But it's something unique that even right here in our own state, we're the only ones in that area growing up that did that, as far as I know. That it was kind of
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll share a little experience because I moved out of Ville Platte and moved to Baton Rouge and New Orleans, back to Baton Rouge. But, what y'all said about the groups and Friday being off the public schools did it as well because they realized that they didn't have enough kids at school to make it very productive. Because these groups stay together. We stayed together from when we were young, same group that was hunting together. Unless one of them got sick and couldn't go or got too old or passed away, those groups stay together. I still hunt pretty much with the same group that I've been hunting with for the last 20 years. And leaving Ville Platte and going to New Orleans when I went to med school down there, they couldn't believe that I'm the only person. I show up to med school and I have a shotgun behind my seat. And for squirrel season especially, I'm going to find a place to go squirrel hunting. So back then I would go to near the Mississippi line or Tunica Hills, and there was a hunting refuge, wildlife refuge on the Mississippi border, and I would go. I was the only one hunting out there. I was the only one squirrels, and I'd show up. And my roommate was from St. Bernard Parish. I'd cook him some squirrels. He had never seen any of that. From Chalmette. That's exactly where he was from.
Down the bayou, boy.
Down the bayou.
Bayou. And then moving even from there, moving to Baton Rouge, people didn't cook squirrels the way we cook them in a rice and gravy and a pot roast. So when I started hunting when I was living in Baton Rouge, I got in a hunt club in Gross Tech, and I would go in there and there were squirrels, unbelievable. Most of the guys would go and kill 3 or 4. I took off the first week. I took my 1 week of vacation, the first week of squirrel season. The limit said I killed 64 the first week. Those guys are like, y'all coon asses are crazy. Y'all like some squirrels. And I said, hey, they're good eating. I cooked some for them. They were like, I've never tried it like this. They would put them on a barbecue pit. They'd roast them in foil
or fry.
Cook them a pot roast, and they were like, "This is really good stuff."
That's still my.
And they would clean the pot. Says it's not wild tasting. It's a very clean, non-wild tasting game. It's pretty easy to cook once you know how to do it. And those guys I met through the years really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I've seen the same thing, Dino, through the years. It's a lot of the same stuff when it comes to what you said right there. I tell people, a lot of people, they say, like we were talking about Houma, Thibodeau, all those areas, and they say, hey man, you're not truly coon ass unless you I-10 and below. You below I-10 in Louisiana. And I tell them, I say, hold on one second, because where I grew up at, and I tell them, I say, we as coon ass as you're going to get for the most part,
That's right.
But I also tell them, and you guys may disagree with me, but I'm sure you won't on this, is that, they, if you go like for instance, my parents on 167 right there where they at, my dad would come home, and he grew up talking like we talking, coon ass, flat accent. Right. But then he'd go to work, he'd fry some yard bird, and then he'd come back and he's talking like that. And I said, my mom would say, "You not redneck." She's like, "Stop talking in 2 different dialogues like that." But that's how the line. The line is so fine, like where it transitions is my point. That it literally is borderline. What you said, Brad?
The lot of
Brad's kind of.
The line's right around that Evangeline Parish area, right around the Ville Platte area, I guess.
Yeah, Bayou
I would say.
Chico, Pine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, it
hey,
definitely
when I moved to New Orleans, our accent here, when I got there, of course, I had the Ville Platte accent, and I had people there ask me, "Are you from Australia?" I'm like, "What? Am I from Australia?" No, I'm from Louisiana. And then I would come. Well, I lived there for 4 years. When I would come back to Ville Platte, then people were like, "Well, you got a different accent." Kind of like you said, you start hanging around people long enough, it kind of wears on you, and you sound a little different than where you came from. Yeah. And then you go back there, and they're like, "You've been in Ville Platte for a week. I can tell." You got that flat accent again.
Yep.
Come back to Ville Platte, and they're like, "You're talking like a New Orleans."
Yep. And that's what's so unique about Louisiana, the culture, man. It blends, And hey, look, to touch on that, this is a true story. My wife that I've been married to now 20 years. Okay, I met her at LSU when we were at LSU. I was in a class with her when I met her at LSU, and I was into her. I kind of liked her a little bit, kind of in the beginning stages. And she, come to find out, she told one of our classmates, she said, "I think this guy's cute." She says, "I like him." She says, "But I can't date him." She said, "Because he's foreign." She's like, "I think he's from another country the way he talks." And when she told me that, I'm like, "God damn, is it really that bad?" I said, "What was it that threw you off?" She said, "The accent." She said, "But one day you asked to borrow my composition." She said, "And I never heard somebody call it a composition. We always called it a notebook." I said, "Well, I grew up calling it a composition. Hand me your composition, in class." And she's like, "I thought you were foreign." She's like, "I told a girl I couldn't date you. I just wasn't into guys that were from another country. I couldn't relate to you." I said, "Well, there you go. That's how foreign I sounded, I guess." But yeah, you're right. It's amazing how
the dialogue in Louisiana is interesting because we say "save the clothes."
That's right.
There's not many places that say that. Save them from what? They asked me. I was like, "What? Save them? Where'd they go?"
Yep. Or hey, another good one is, hey, you go to the grocery store and you say, "Hey," you tell your kids you want to get down, and over here they're like, "Get down." They're like, "What you talking about? Get down?" I'm like, "You coming with me?" And they're like, "Man, I never heard that. I don't know what the hell that means." It's just one of the things,
Well, the New Orleans bunch they'd talk, "I'm going to make groceries."
Yes.
Right? I've never heard that. So when I was at New Orleans, make groceries, what's all that about, going to make groceries? Now, when I was in Mississippi, every time they couldn't get over when I'd ask them to, "Hey, come to me," and I would always just say what we say now. "Hey, come see." They couldn't understand what "come see" meant. "Hey, come see." Just asking them to come
here, huh?
Come here. Come see. And they still make fun of me for that. Some of my good friends, from Mississippi, they call me and they just do, "Hey, D, come see." So they mock me.
Yeah.
By doing that.
Picking on me.
They loved it, but they said, "Man, what y'all talk is bananas."
I hear you.
What you mean with what we talk is bananas?
It's different, man.
It's different, but it's right.
Well, it's kind of like Cajun French. You have someone speaking
that you were foreign, Coach. Without you talking, you got it. Look, you got a little Shiite look to you, Jacob. You got a little Shiite looking to you. You talking about your wife thinking you were forein?
Yeah.
Looking at you right now, you got a little Muslim look to you.
Yeah.
You might be a little Shiite.
Yeah. Fat Muslim.
A little Sunni. You might be a little Sunni.
Oh, yeah.
Well, then they hear you talk and they say, "Oh, my God."
That's right. That's right. Let's see. Well, hey, look, let's talk a little bit about let's talk a little bit of ducks now, guys. We
Yeah.
all enjoy waterfowl hunting. All four of us. I know you guys hunt. You've hunted. Y'all hunted all over the place. I know all of y'all have. Brad, you actually work with wildlife and fisheries here in Louisiana, man. Let me ask you that, Brad. Let's start there. Kind of how involved are you like with waterfowl hunting in Louisiana? Do you have anything to do with the waterfowl hunting in Louisiana? Like, what's your part or what's your take on where we are now with waterfowl in Louisiana versus what it was maybe a decade or before? A lot of people have opinions on that, so I'd like to get your opinion.
Well, I'm a fisheries biologist right now. I did start out my career in the wildlife section, and I did a lot of work. Worked with the wildlife division 10 years, so I did a lot of work on wildlife management areas. Banded hundreds and hundreds of wood ducks. I did a lot of wood duck monitoring when I was in the wildlife division. But now I've been back in the fisheries the last 12 years, so that's where I want it to be. So I'm where I want to be now. But I don't see a whole lot of the waterfowl stuff anymore, being that I mainly work with fisheries. But as far as my take on the hunting in the last 10, 20, 30 years, just from growing up hunting Miller's Lake, I mean, when I was old enough to walk, I was in a duck blind. My great-grandmother was one of the founders of Miller's Lake. Her and her siblings were the ones that built it. And I've been hunting there probably since I was 3 or 4 years old. In those days, man, we would kill ducks like crazy. Any kind of duck you can think of. A lot of mallards, big ducks, teals, wood ducks, anything. And over the years, it's different in different parts of the parish, but I mean, Mockingbird and Brandon can vouch for this. If you don't have teal these days, you're not going to kill much. And that's how it goes at Miller's, and I know it's the same where the other guys hunt. Because we used to kill a lot of mallards and pintail at Miller's, and now you still gonna have, you might have 4 or 5 good mallard days out of the whole season at Miller's Lake, but it's not like it was, in the late 80s and the 90s, where you can, any bluebird day, you can go sit in a blind and shoot mallards till 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not like that anymore. That's a fact.
Yeah. Hey, let's talk about that because not everybody knows Miller's Lake, Brad, and you guys have all hunted that area as well. How important? Like, I'd like to talk a little bit about Miller's, a little bit about maybe some of the agriculture hunting, Dino, that's available and that you grew up in. You talked about the farming practices your family did, but let's start with Miller's Lake. Kind of, Brad, I don't know, Brad, maybe you probably the one, the historian on there, but for the people who don't know the importance of Miller's Lake in Evangeline Parish for the waterfowl hunting community through the years and the farming practices as well, give us a little bit of history of Miller's Lake and how important that area is to the community.
Well, originally Miller's Lake was built, like I said, by my great-grandmother and her siblings. It was, the original lake was 200 acres, I believe, when they made the first levee. And it was predominantly used for irrigation for rice. That was the main reason the lake was built. And a few years later, they decided to break the levee, make it bigger, and now it's 3,200 acres, and it's been like that, for the rest of its life since that date. But the main reason the lake was built was to flood rice. For all the farmers around Miller's Lake, and still today, a lot of those farmers rely on the lake water for their crops, to flood their crops. And now, just a couple years ago, our family started allowing these farmers to use water for crawfish also. So they use a lot of the lake water to farm rice and farm crawfish. So it really hurts the duck hunters on drought years like last year and the year before, because all these farmers are pulling the water out to flood their fields. And last year, man, I bet 50 or 60% of that lake was probably dry last year.
Really?
And I forgot where I was going with it.
So guys,
Bradley, I remember when they burn it. You remember the year that they burnt the lake?
Yeah, that was in '99. That was a big drought year, and I'd say the northern 1,000 acres of the lake is more of like a swamp. There's a lot of buttonwoods. There's just little trails throughout with duck holes with blinds in them. And over the years, the habitat has degraded tremendously in that lake, especially on the north end with the mats. And then just recent, in the last 5 or 6 years, the biggest plant we fight all over the state is giant Sylvania. And that has taken a toll on Miller's Lake, plus a lot of marshland and everything all over the state. I mean, I know because I work for Wildlife and Fisheries, we spend millions of dollars a year just combating that one species of plant. And thank God we have, Miller's Lake has an MOU that's been done. We renew the MOU every year with Wildlife and Fisheries. So I kind of know both worlds with Wildlife and Fisheries and Miller's Lake, the way it works.
yeah.
So we got a memorandum of understanding with Wildlife and Fisheries. Wildlife and Fisheries manages the fisheries and the aquatic plant control of Miller's Lake. And then, so in order for us to do that, the family of Miller's Lake has to leave it open to the public for fishing. But we also have a hunt club at Miller's Lake that's been going on, I don't know, Mark, you may know how many years. It's probably 70, 80 years that the hunt club's been going on.
Yeah, well, I know that the Bon Ton is like at least 62, so it's been going on for at least that long.
Yeah,
Right?
I'd say
About the same time. It's been probably about 60 to 65 years.
Right.
yeah.
Wow.
So we have a hunting club. It's a duck hunting club in Miller's Lake. We have 100 members, and pretty much every year, we have a full membership. And of course, it's increased over the years, and it's still probably one of the better, cheapest places to hunt in the state of Louisiana, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Price-wise, for sure. And of course, everything costs so much these days. Just the upkeep of the lake, especially with the aquatic vegetation that we got to fight these days. So prices have gone up, but it's still, man, there's not many places you can have that quality of place to hunt for $1,500.
No, that's a hell of a deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the good thing about it is, there are different habitat types in the lake. So you can hunt on the south part of the lake. You're in the wide open where you're going to shoot divers and teal and whatnot. Then you can go hunt in these little buttonwood holes where you hunt in a 1/4 acre hole in the middle of the buttonwood where you don't even know where you at. And you can shoot wood ducks and big ducks. Sometimes you'll kill mallards in there, green wings. And then we also have some wooded areas, just like flooded timber. But those areas, especially the flooded timber, it's just so overrun with giant Sylvania now. So you barely ever see a duck in there.
Yeah, that's
sad. It's so hard to control.
The legendary blinds of Ivy and what was Chico's blind? And Tibu, but what was Chico's blind that was way back?
Oh, the gas chamber.
The gas chamber. It had trees all around it. I remember.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Ivy and the gas chamber.
Yes.
I bet you
And
there was.
buckshot.
What's that?
And there,
what is it?
Buckshot.
Gotcha.
buckshot, yeah. I bet the gas chamber and Ivy blind, those have killed hundreds of thousands of greenheads.
Yep.
Between the 50s and the 80s.
Yeah.
Do y'all have any idea how they named those blinds or who named them? Any of that history?
A lot of
Some of the older blinds, like
that
Albert, were named after members.
people.
Yeah.
Like Gus, Albert, those were all like members that were named after members.
Okay.
There's other ones like Dolomite, which is one of my favorite. I still don't know quite how it, but Dolomite was an old movie way back when.
Yeah.
Dolomite, I think, predated Shaft. You
Yeah.
remember Shaft, John?
Yeah,
Shaft?
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
they got a blind named Dolomite. And
Dolomite.
I'm not sure if it was named after the character Dolomite or the movie,
I'll
but
be-
it was Dolomite, and they got several different names. But Brad and Dino probably know them better than me now because I've been out of Miller's now for 10 years. I was a member of Miller's, even had a camp on the levee.
Yeah.
But back then
I can
it was.
tell you. I
Go
can
ahead,
tell you a
Dick.
story about buckshot. Back then, you couldn't get to all the blinds in the back of the lake from the front of the lake, where all the members come in, where the drawing's at, where the camps are. So my dad was a member, one of the original members way back when, and they decided they were going to take over a hole that was hunted primarily by members, by residents that were not members of Miller's Lake. So my dad made a trail from the front of the lake, and he and his partner went hunting the opening day of that particular season. When they got there, residents from the north side of the lake were standing on the other end of the pond. Well, my dad's partner was not going to back down from him because it was part of Miller's Lake. They were members. They had claimed the blind. So my dad and his partner, who were hunting the blind that day, were in basically a two-road. And the resident who was not supposed to be hunting Miller's Lake was on exactly opposite side of the pond. And they started arguing. So my dad put his partner between him and the other guy, thinking that when we might have a gunfight right here. And this is way back in the day. So they were arguing with each other, pointing guns at each other. And they said, look, it's no problem. He said, y'all just hunt on that side of the pond. We'll hunt on this side of the pond. They were directly 180 degrees across the pond from each other. They would have been shooting at each other. My dad was like, we need to get out of here before we get killed in the woods. So that's how we got the name buckshot. That's where the name buckshot comes from.
Really?
My dad's partner then was not afraid to back down from whatever trespasser who had been hunting that. And look, I understand he had been hunting that his whole life. It was a little hole that they had made. My dad made a trail from the front of the lake, and he and his partner showed up opening day, and these guys were like, well, y'all not taking our spot from us. So it's and look, across the whole pond might be 70 yards. So you don't want to be straight across the pond shooting ducks coming in at 70 yards from each other. Somebody's going to get hurt. So it was a threat to try to prevent them from coming back to that blind. But my dad was tough and didn't want to back down either. But his partner was really like, oh, this is BS. We're not leaving. This is our blind. We staying here. And they hunted, but that's how I got the name buckshot.
That's crazy.
It's an interesting story.
That's a very
I
interesting
heard my dad. Yeah.
So one other thing, Jake, about Miller's Lake was the Friday night before opening weekend party. That was one of the days, kind of like Squirrel Day. It was Duck Day. Of course, we went off of school that day.
Yeah.
But everybody that hunted Miller's Lake and then their cousins and friends, it was like a duck festival on the levee. There's about, 30 camps or so. Every camp has 8 to 10 people in it. There's a sauce cooking in every camp. Getting drunk, telling stories, and there was one guy, DJ Fontenot, we called him Girl Baby. We'd always like to play some jokes on him. So this is a pretty good story. One year, I don't remember how long ago this was. There wasn't a whole lot of ducks, and opening day was tomorrow. So everybody was kind of debondé because we wasn't going to kill much. So me and one of our good buddies, Gene Latour, we went and got some chickens, and we had 3 chickens. So we waited till everybody went to bed, and we snuck out into the lake at about 2 in the morning, and we went to grow baby's duck blind, and we put the chickens in his blind and tied them to one of the posts on their feet. And I don't remember who he was hunting with. You might know, Dino.
David Artigo.
It was him and David Artigo. They pulled up in that blind before daylight, and there was nothing but a bunch of chickens in it. Of course, it scared the shit out of them at first. And then once we realized it was chickens, they put the chickens on top of the boat chute. And they were like, well, I guess we'll just hunt with chickens. And once it got daylight, once it was daylight, there was no ducks. It was one of those opening days where it was just crap. So they wrung their necks, they killed them 3 chickens, and they brought 3 chickens back to the camp, but they had something to cook for lunch.
That's awesome.
That's good stuff.
That's
a good meal.
A lot of things like that go on or did go on. We were kind of wild growing up. Of course, we'd already talked about generations. The generations today are not like we were.
Hey, but let me ask y'all this, and you said it again just now. You said the generations we were just built different back then, you know, and times were different. My question for we get approached by a lot of young waterfowl hunters that are coming into waterfowling, and they follow us on social media, whether it's our YouTube channels, you know, any of the social media platforms. And I get a lot of questions from people that are afraid to ask because they feel like they're going to get antagonized by other people out there on social media. So they'll come to places like we offer, you know, and they'll say, hey, we follow y'all, we watch y'all, we respect what you say, and they'll ask questions about that. But my question is, how do we get back? How do we get the generations back? It's not going to be like it was when we came up, but how do we kind of turn that around and get more of them involved in hunting and get them away from technology nowadays?
To me, it's a lot of education. I mean, the older generation, or not even the older generation, our generation, of course, we all teach our kids to hunt and fish, and to me, education is the key, and to try to get them away from them damn iPads and iPhones.
Yep.
Yeah, education and putting it out there on these social platforms, on you know, opportunities. Some people may not know about the opportunities that you have with public hunts with wildlife and fisheries, but education and look, the world's you know, it's so fast now. Families are so busy, parents are so busy. Slow down, teach your kids the importance of doing it, just the everyday simplicities of life. From whether it's working, putting a nail in a board, to feeding chickens, to raising chickens, to where the eggs come from, where the ducks come from, wildlife management. You know, when I was growing up, we had goats, chickens, ducks, horses, cows. We had all those things, and you don't see those things nowadays. How do you bring that back? It's very difficult, but education and offering people those opportunities, because every kid that I've ever met loves animals.
Yeah.
Every little young kid. So if you get them around those animals and whether it's ducks, chickens, dogs, cats, whatever, pets, you get them around those animals, and then they'll grow a love for that, you know, and it's having them outdoors, playing with those animals, whether it's riding a horse or taking care of a cow or whatever. But raising ducks, I mean, I raised ducks, geese, and like I said, all these animals. Nowadays, you just don't see that as much, and I don't think it's ever going to come back to where it was. You'll hopefully have a more interest in it at some point, but I don't see it happening with technology nowadays. The world's just too fast, and there's too many other
distractions,
I would say revenue.
obstacles.
Yeah, distractions and there's all these avenues that kids take that aren't related to what we grew up with. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have all those social media platforms and all those distractions that kids have nowadays. And families are so busy. Look, I'm one of them. I have 4 kids. I have one 15-year-old and I have 3 young kids. And I just don't have the time to show them the outdoors like what I did. What we did was unique because that's what our parents did. My dad was a farmer, but he worked for Shell Oil Company before that. Then he worked for Clico as a lineman, and he started farming. And he always told me, he said, I farm to hunt. I love it. I love the outdoors. And if you want to come, you come. But if not, that's okay as well. But I loved it. So I was right there with him, and he did it every day, So,
but Dean, you do the outdoors. You're a good daddy. You got them all in ball right now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we playing some ball and little flag football and fly football.
You go through phases.
You go through phases. I'm going to be honest with you. In my opinion, it all starts at home, and you've got to bring those young ones hunting and on those trips. But the problem is the world is so fast, dude. Work. People are working more. They're working more often. They're working longer hours.
Yep.
And, at times they get off and their opportunity. I'm talking about the guys like our age. They get off. Their opportunity is, oh, my God, I need to go straight to the woods. I can hunt till 9 a.m. and then I got to go back to work.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily conducive for bringing and teaching them young ones.
Yeah.
The way that
time to spend with them.
Right. The way that it used to be. But as far as the weekends go, you gotta, if you're gonna bring them up into that hunting realm, you gotta take them. You gotta bring them. That's the only thing that's gonna get them there. And if
you don't introduce them to the outdoors, they sure not gonna like it.
Yeah. Yeah, because look, let's be honest. If it's like I got a 10-year-old, if I give him the choice and I say, hey, do you want to stay home and play on your video games with your friends, or do you want to come hunting with dad? 9 out of 10 times he's going to choose those friends in that video game.
Right.
Because what I'm seeing, and y'all may have kids in that range, in that age range now, but what I'm seeing is that's how they communicate nowadays. They don't have cell phones at that age yet. They don't have like we talked about earlier in the show, Dino. We used to take bikes, and we'd go and ride, and that's how we communicated with our friends, all of us. Nowadays they communicate online with their friends, and that's how they socialize now. So if you take that away from them to say, hey, come sit in a deer stand with me and be bored to death, you might not see a deer, then they're going to choose that more often than not.
I know.
It's just that's
the
one
avenues that Dino was talking about. There's a lot of paths, away from old schooling.
That's it.
You know what I'm saying? There's a lot.
The main thing to me, the main thing is you got to make time. Got to make time.
That's right, Brad. Yeah, that's well said. I mean, you do.
I have all girls. I'm the only man that lives in my house.
He's outnumbered.
Well, I bring my little girls hunting, and to this day, they want to keep going. They want to go.
Yep.
When you bring me back, Daddy, like my 8-year-old killed her first ducks for teal season,
and he's also coaching them softball.
I coach softball.
Yeah,
that's all the time, and just try to find time to bring them. That's it.
Yeah,
finding time is the main.
Yeah, if you don't do it, they definitely not going to have an interest in it.
That's right.
So if you don't find time, like Mock, you said, it starts at home, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
If the parents don't make the time to bring the kids, then there's no way for their kids to enjoy it, appreciate it, and learn how to do it, so that way they can pass it on to the next generation. I've seen a tremendous change over my lifetime. I'm 48 now. What's going to be the changes in the next 40 years?
Right.
Well,
You know,
that's exactly what I was going to ask you, all of y'all. Where do you see, okay, with so much pushback now on hunters and outdoorsmen, you know, the political side of it, you know, and that's something that I believe it or not, on social media, I get hit on a lot from people that make comments on videos. They're like, you know, you kill animals and you do this and this. You get a lot of, you know, because that's just part of the game. That's what comes with being online and social media nowadays. But I try to take the time to explain to them, outdoorsmen are the biggest conservationists out there for waterfowl and any kind of wildlife. You know, what's y'all take on that for somebody that would say a naysayer, say, hey, you know, y'all doing it the wrong way? What would you tell somebody in that situation?
I would say, first, I mean, this is my, you know, from my experience is, like you said, outdoorsmen, whether it's hunting, big game, or bird hunting, outdoorsmen spend more money in preservation and planting crops and making sure that these animals, whether it's deer, feeding them, planting food plots for them, making sure that they have everything to survive. The last thing that outdoorsmen want to see is the decimation of the population of the birds or the deer or the animals that they like to hunt. They want to see it flourish. We enjoy, we like Ducks Unlimited and Delta Waterfowl. When the waterfowl counts come out, we all looking for them. And we want to see that, yes, the population of mallards went up, the population of teal went up. That's great. The federal government mandates that we have to adjust seasons based on the population of those birds, or you know, how many does we're going to kill or how many bucks we can kill. But nobody does more for and the animals that are out there, the wildlife that we hunt, than the hunters themselves, because we don't want to see them go. We enjoy it. I enjoy going to sit on a deer stand, even if I don't shoot anything, just sitting there. If I see, when I grew up, you were lucky if you saw 2 deer the whole year. Nowadays, I'll go and see 10 or 12 and hunt. There's nothing more enjoyable than that. Do I have to shoot an animal? Do I have to kill one? No.
That's right.
But like you said, you go on those some of these outdoor channels, and you'll see, you know, comments that, oh, you know, you're not a man, you shot an innocent animal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you did shoot an animal, you took the life of an animal. However, you did more for the reproduction of those animals and the longevity of those animals. Just hunters in general, that's what we do. You know, we don't want to decimate and wipe out every duck and dove and squirrel and deer. We do a lot to preserve those animals as well. And that's what people on the other side don't understand. They see this little isolated hunt and they think that, well, that's all we do is we go out there and we just shoot everything. No, that's not how it works. We do a lot to preserve the game that we hunt as well. Like I said, we do more for them than any of these other people do, but that's not ever, you know, talked about.
Yeah. You know, the progressive left is growing.
Yep.
They are.
Yes.
And they're looking for any opportunity to just chop and chop and chop. And unfortunately, it's like that. I don't see it slowing down, you know. So they're always going to come after us for anything. My whole thing, Dino, I can go back to when I was in New Orleans, you know, when I was at LSU New Orleans in PT school. I would come home every weekend and they would do, Evangeline, why are you going home? I said, well, I'm going hunting or I'm going fishing. He said, why? I really couldn't answer it, but to tell him, well, that's my time to de-freak.
Yep. And they didn't understand
and
fishing what they grew up with.
Right. And that allows me, that's my time to de-freak. Get away from all of that. I can go and sit, whether it's in a duck blind, a deer stand, or in the boat at the middle of Toledo Bend, whether catching or not, you get to slow it down, pull it back, get into some meditation, just self-search. It's your time to soak it all in.
Yeah.
It helps me clear and reset.
I did the same thing, David. When I went play college ball at Belhaven in Jackson, Mississippi, baseball.
Mhm.
I came, and it's not 30 minutes down the road. I'd come home every weekend that I was allowed to
Yeah.
because I wanted to hunt and fish.
Yep.
And then after my first year of playing ball, I mean, y'all knew me. I grew up playing baseball. I loved it. Dreamed to play college. After my first year, I said, "The hell with this." I quit because I can't hunt and fish enough.
That's right. It
Yep.
made it tough, dude. Look, I went through all of that, B, as you know. It
Yeah.
made it tough, man. And I carried that in. But when I got to when I got to New Orleans and I would come home, hell, there were times I was leaving 82s after a big test on Friday. We'd go do a little thing, bulk out of there, leave from 82s, driving up into Ville Platte at about 4 a.m. and going to jump in a blind or on a stand or something.
Yeah.
And that just reset me. And how to get it back to that and show the young ones like how to peel it back. I don't know. Again,
Yeah, and a
that's
lot
a
of
home
it,
thing.
society doesn't allow it anymore.
Society
It's
is
like when we
they
grew up-
certainly like to buck it for sure.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying when we grew up with guns in our truck and we'd leave straight
Right.
from school and go to a duck blind, You
Right.
can't do that anymore.
No.
Not quite. And that's why it's so important for us to get them involved. Like we all talked about it a while ago. We all got kids. Mark, you had kids and even grandkids coming up. You gotta get them involved, and that's why we got to keep that generational thing going, man.
Yep.
It's so important. Another thing, just real brief. We kind of getting. I don't want to take too much of y'all time tonight, but I want to run this by you. I had a guy that was speaking of New Orleans. He was in med school in New Orleans. A couple of weeks ago, he messaged me personally, and he says, "Look, I just want to pick your mind on waterfowl hunting. This and that. I'm interested in getting into it." And he said, "I want to get your thoughts on a couple of things off record." He said, and he talked about the organizations of Delta Waterfowl, Ducks Unlimited, and he said, He said, my generation of friends that are waterfowl hunters right now. He said they seem to think that they are the enemies of these organizations.
Yeah.
He sees that they don't trust these organizations. They think they're hurting the sport more than they're helping the sport. Give me your guys' take, because I gave him my opinion on it, which was the opposite of what he said that they thought, but I want to hear y'all opinion on that.
I can tell you something firsthand, Jacob. Especially when I worked in the wildlife division for wildlife and fisheries, I was the biologist over Sherman Wildlife Management Area for a couple of years, and did a lot of the management on the South Fork, which you hunted.
Yeah.
And during that time, all those youth hunts that we put on over there, and a lot of improvements into those waterfowl units over there, were paid for with funds from DU and Delta Waterfowl.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's the kind of things that people, especially those younger guys, they don't see that kind of stuff. DU and Delta Waterfowl are some damn good organizations that do a lot for waterfowl habitat all throughout the country. People blame them for short-stopping ducks, but they ain't got shit to do with that. But just from seeing, in my view, I've seen it in action. I've seen projects that they have done. I've seen them come on all these big youth hunts, these waterfowl youth hunts, deer youth hunts on public land. Delta Waterfowl, DU shows up. They bring the kids duck calls and cook and, pay for the hamburgers that we cook for them and all that good stuff. I think it goes back to education. I don't think Delta Waterfowl and DU educate the younger generation good enough.
That's a great point. That is a great point.
Yeah, and you know, growing up, you didn't have it wasn't as commercialized in the Midwest, so you didn't have as many commercial outfitters in the Midwest. So I think that's where people lay some of the blame on DU. They put the word out there on the economic impact that wildlife, we're talking about wildlife hunting has, and you have a lot more people who in the Midwest used to, you didn't have as many hunters, and you could hunt a lot of areas there. If you drove up from Louisiana, let's say, and you wanted to go hunt, you could go ask any landowner and they would let you hunt. Nowadays, a lot of those lands are being leased out for commercial hunting by guides that have commercial outfitting up there. And I think the word got out from when Ducks Unlimited started. They started spreading the word about how much fun this is, but also some of these people could make a living being an outfitter or being a guide. And so that's where I think a lot of the negative publicity came with shortstop and ducks, because look, they do a lot more for the habitat to try to keep them there now versus back when I was younger. The ducks didn't stay in the Midwest. The ducks came down to Arkansas. Stuttgart, Arkansas was always a haven, and all of Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas. And now our flyway has changed. The ducks, unless it gets really cold or there's some really the cold weather or snow, that covers up the feed in the Midwest, the ducks just don't make it here like they used to. So I think that's where that's where the negative publicity got on DU, that especially from the hunters down in Louisiana, down south, that the ducks just don't get here anymore. I remember many times when I was young, my dad would go outside, and you could go outside at any time of the day, but 9, 10 o'clock, you could go look and you'd see a flight of mallards where you'd be like, look, I'm going to the blind for a couple hours. You go sit in the blind and come back with 2 or 3 mallards or 2 or 3 gray ducks, whatever. You just don't have that flight of ducks moving south nowadays like we used to.
Right.
Look, we October
Especially
15th today. We October 15th today.
What?
I said, especially during the hunting season, you don't see that.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Hey, but
October
even
15th right now, when I was growing up, this is one thing I always remembered. Opening weekend of squirrel season, I always hered my first speckled bellies flying over. Always, we camped in the woods, and I always heard like that was like a big thing. Look, the speckled bellies are coming in. I haven't heard my first one yet this year, but hopefully I will soon, especially with the colder weather we're going to get in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
I heard my first specks. And usually, you're right, for opening weekend of squirrel is when we always, they used to laugh because I would text Bash and I'd text Darren and my blind partners, so I was texting DeVille and Clarky and Trent and them. I would text them, just heard the specs. Look out, boys. Well,
the reason I said during hunting season,
right,
is because in February and March, there's thousands of ducks down here.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. We just don't get the weather that we used to get to bring them down. And of course, the habitat is improved, in the northern part of the flyway.
Right.
But
right.
And Dino,
but even in Arkansas, I hunt Arkansas quite a bit now.
Yeah.
With I was hunting with Tim and with Marion and them, and they don't have the birds that they had.
No, they're not. It's starting to affect them more than it ever did, probably.
Yeah.
They further up. I just have a good friend of mine who he made a trip to Canada. He drove that trip to Canada, and he told me, he says, I didn't see a concentration of birds till I hit, he said, into Canada. He said,
wow.
That was last week.
Yeah.
He said the Dakotas had no birds in the Dakotas sitting on them where he went through. He said you'd see a pond with 5 or 6 sitting on it. He said until I crossed that border, that's where they were. But it's a lot warmer than it typically is at this time of year. You know?
Right.
So we may get a later migration this year because it's been so warm. I mean, we sit in middle of October, almost going into the end of October, and look how warm it's been. We're going to get a cool front this week, but if you look at it next week, it kind of creeps back up again, you know? So
yeah, I can. You know, when we were kids, I can bring it all the way back. When we were kids, without pellet guns, again going back.
Yeah.
Right now, we were shooting robins up in the trees through the neighborhoods, and it was cold.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
Now there's none right now.
No.
Very few.
You're lucky if you see them in January.
You don't see the robins.
I know it. I know.
You know.
You don't see them.
But
and it's not because you and Brad shot them all when y'all were kids. Dino.
We probably all had a little part of that problem.
And Gene. You throw Gene in there. It's just it's kind of like you said, the timing and the weather. It's I definitely think that it's shifted and it's changed. We don't nearly get as cold early as we used to when we were kids.
No, we don't.
I don't think so.
We don't. I remember opening weekend of summer season.
I don't think so.
Coats on, you know?
Right.
It was just different. It was different back then. But anyway. Well, look, guys, I can't tell y'all how much I've enjoyed this episode, catching up with all of y'all. It's so good to see y'all, man. And I want to thank y'all, each and every one of y'all, for coming on this episode tonight, taking time away from your families, to give a little bit of education, a little bit of history of, you know, our area we all grew up in, how special it is to the culture here in Louisiana, to not only, you know, Louisiana itself, but the hunting community, and share a little bit of history about it. So thank y'all so much for that tonight. I know we could probably do a part 2 on this, and we might end up trying to do this again and share some more stories, delve into it. But thank y'all so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
Hey, thanks for having me,
Thank
Jacob.
you.
I enjoyed it. Good seeing you again, my friend.
Y'all
and
too,
you two guys, I see y'all all the time.
Yeah,
But I always enjoy it. Always enjoy it.
Yeah,
Absolutely, Mark. Thank you, Jacob. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Y'all take care, man. We'll talk. Good luck to y'all this season, too.
Thank you, bud. You too.
You too.
All right, guys.
All right, later, bud.
All right, well, there you have it, guys. That was an absolutely awesome episode, catching up with my old friends from back home in Ville Platte, Louisiana, Evangeline Parish. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope you took it as a little bit of education as far as getting some insight on what we could do to further this sport and continue to get people involved in the waterfowl hunting community and the outdoors in general. It's not just always waterfowl. I know we're a waterfowl channel, but it's not always just about the waterfowl that we want to focus on. When we talk about topics like this, we want to make sure and stress that it's just outdoors in general, getting our youth involved in the outdoors, getting them outside and getting them involved in what Mother Nature has to offer and carrying those traditions that we talked about on this episode out for future generations to enjoy. So I really had a lot of respect for these guys on the topics they discussed with me tonight, their opinions on it, and just had a lot of fun in general, guys. So I hope you did too. If y'all enjoyed it and you're watching right now on our YouTube channel or our Facebook page and you haven't subscribed already, give us a subscribe. We would appreciate it. Follow us on our Facebook page for future episodes just like this. And thank you to all of you who interacted and left a comment tonight in the live stream. We appreciate it. The guys enjoy reading it. They go back, they make comments on it, and we'll respond to a lot of the comments that were left tonight, guys. So until next time, my name is Jacob. This is Last Stop Waterfowl Outdoors Podcast. Signing off. Until next time, y'all take care, and we'll do it again soon, guys. Y'all have a good evening and stay safe out there.